My full name is Clifton Duane Kerr. My father's name was Clifton George Mercer Kerr. Well, I got his first name, but they always called me by my middle name. I've never gone by Clifton. But was born here in Tremont. Our first home was up on the third floor of the old hospital on Main Street. We had an apartment up there. So we lived there while my father built a home on 2nd East in Tremont. 2nd East, 1st East. 1st East in Tremont, just north of the Library Park. So we moved into the basement when he got that done and lived in the basement while he built the upper story. Then moved
I bet that was fun.
Then moved upstairs, and from then on they rented the basement, usually to school teachers there in town. And Gigi was a traveling salesman, sold clothing for Utah Knit. Traveled all over the Northwest, but particularly in Idaho. And I went on one of those sales trips with him when I was probably about 10. Went up, and I remember staying in a hotel in Pocatello one night, and then we went on up through Rexburg in that area on a sales trip. So I was with him for a week, and then he opened a clothing store, a men's clothing store in Tremont, and worked in that. Bought his farm, and bought 40 acres first, which he ran, and then he bought the family home out there, which was on another 40 acres. So he had the 80 acres right together, and we moved into that home, and I grew up really there from the time I was 9 or 10. Spent the rest of my single life living in that home.
That's actually a lot of history I don't know about Gigi. I didn't know he was a traveling salesman for a while.
Yeah,
Or that he
yeah.
owned a store in town.
Yeah, he did that for years, and then was invited to manage the Farmers Cash Union, which was a hardware and lumber store on Main Street in Tremont. So he managed that, and about that time Rolf and I were getting old enough we could do the farming, so we were running the tractors, doing the plowing and the mowing and baling hay while he was working at the Farmers Cash Union. That later became Anderson Lumber. Anderson bought Farmers Cash Union from the local co-op, but they hired him to continue working there. And he did that until their mission, when he went to England to preside over the British mission. We're there for 3 years and then came back, and then he ran for county commission, and let's see, as I remember, he was defeated in his run for county commission, but then ran for county auditor and was elected auditor. was the auditor for the rest of his working life. And commuted, lived here in the family home, and drove to Brigham each day to work.
So you grew up on about 80 acres of land.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys farm that then?
Pardon?
Did you guys farm those 80 acres?
Oh yeah, I'll say. Yeah. We raised, and we fed cattle. We usually had about 250 head of heifers each fall. He'd buy and put in the corrals out there. Mm-hmm. And so we never sold our hay or grain. We fed it to cows, and that was called selling it on the hoof. You didn't sell your hay in bales. You sold it as a fat cow to the market for butchering. And so he'd feed 250 head of fat heifers each winter, and then in the spring they would be sold to go back to the Midwest to feedlots there to be finished out. He'd sell them as feeders, no longer calves, but ready to go into the feedlot, be fattened up for the market 6 months later.
Really?
Wow.
That's interesting. Huh.
That's a lot of cattle. 250. It's a lot.
What year did you say you were born?
1933.
1933. So, in your lifetime, have you seen a lot of change in the world?
What's the question?
In your lifetime, have you seen a lot of change in the world?
Changes?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll say. 33 was the Depression. We were still in the Depression, which started in what, 29? We were still in the Depression in 33. And really we're still in it until World War II. World War II was what ended the Depression. That was a bad war, but it economically was meant a lot to the United States. It ended the Depression and brought a lot of people out of debt into good, high-paying jobs, and really, bad as it is to say, it was probably good for the country, economically.
Can you tell us why you went into the medical field?
Because my folks went to England on a mission. I was planning on going to dental school. When I went to college, it was pre-dentistry, which is the same as pre-med, except, again, medical school takes an extra 1 or 2 years. So I went to the Y in pre-dentistry, and was all set to go to, well, I was accepted at St. Louis, Columbia, and at Northwestern in Chicago, 3 or 4 other dental schools, University of Southern California. So I accepted the Southern California position, and the Korean War was on. There were no missionaries being sent out. So I'd always wanted to go on a mission, but there weren't no draft eligible young men were being sent on missions. So I accepted the dental school spot at the University of Southern California, and 5 days before I was to start school, they opened the way for one missionary from each ward to go on a mission.
Wow.
Bishop Stanquist called me in and said, I know you want to go on a mission, but Teddy Walker wants to go too, and he's older than you. So Teddy will get our ward's allotment.
Oh.
So I went ahead with my dental school plans, and 5 days before I was to start dental school, they announced that if a ward didn't use its allotment, that quota could be transferred to another missionary, another ward within that stake. And Thatcher Penrose didn't have anybody to go on a mission, and so their allotment became available, and I got it. That's how I was able to go on a mission, and so was sent to Canada, to Toronto. Same mission that we went to, one of our granddaughters.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm not sure who it was. You said one of your granddaughters served there?
Yeah,
I can't remember who that is. Oh, Rebecca.
yeah,
Did she
Rebecca.
serve in Toronto? Tell us a little bit about your mission. Do you have any stories from Toronto?
Well, Toronto's headquarters, and I was sent to Ottawa, which is the Dominion capital of the country of Canada. Went there, and my companion was from Alberta, and our room was upstairs above the kitchen of the house we lived, of the landlady's house. And our room was heated by a hole in the floor over her kitchen stove. So she'd be cooking bean soup down there, and that's what heated our room all winter in Canada, where you really needed heat in your house.
Yeah.
So it was marginal living, but we got along with it all right, and worked out of there for I was out of there 11 months, I guess, and was then transferred to Sault Ste. Marie, which is in western Ontario, just across the river from Upper Michigan, and that was a great assignment. A lot of young families there. While we were there, an American family was moved to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, across the river. He was in the FBI and was called to be stake president in our little branch in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And so we were back and forth across the river in both countries. Had a great time there. And from there I was transferred down to Chatham, which is where, who did we say had been?
Rebecca.
Rebecca was in Chatham. I went there and was there 3 weeks, and was in the kitchen, in our little kitchen, cooking supper one evening with the radio blaring rock music when my mission president opened the door and came in.
Oh no!
We weren't supposed to be listening to any rock music, but somehow that was on, and he didn't say anything about it, but he was there to ask me to be his second counselor, which is, I guess, equivalent to being a zone leader now, except it was over
The president, maybe.
how many ever zones we had. We didn't have zone leaders. We had district presidents who were missionaries.
Okay.
The district presidents were missionaries, and So as second counselor to the mission president, his first counselor was a local member, Canadian. So I was sort of the senior missionary, and my job was to work with every missionary. Go out and we'd spend our mornings talking, training, and then in the afternoon I'd go out and tract with each of them. And mission president said, it's not essential to the call, but you're going to be traveling by train and bus. If it had worked for you to have a car, it would sure be an advantage. And so Gigi bought a car here in Tremont, arranged for me to go to Detroit and pick it up. So I went down to cross the river from Detroit, crossed over and picked up a new Pontiac and drove it back and drove that around Ontario the rest of my mission.
Wow, that's awesome.
Did you guys just sell it after you left, or?
Oh, I drove it home.
Oh.
Yeah, and Ralph and I drove it for years going to school. Either I'd have it in patrol or he'd have it driving back and forth to Logan. So we drove that for several more years. You've seen pictures of it. Green Pontiac we added a black, plain green was pretty plain, so we added a black tailgate to it.
Yeah.
Painted black fender and trunk black.
Wow.
That's really interesting. There's not a lot of guys that just drive home from their missions in their own car nowadays.
Yeah, that probably doesn't happen very often.
Well, my good friend from here did also. He was I think he was mission secretary or something in the Northern States Mission, based in Chicago. And he had a car, at least to come home in. I don't know if he had it during his mission, but anyway, I stopped at his mission headquarters and spent a night there. Then he and I drove out together till we got to Salt Lake, and then I turned north and headed home, and he turned south and headed down to see his girlfriend in Provo.
Wow.
That's really
awesome.
interesting. I remember hearing that when you were in medical school, you got to go up into Jackson Hole area and work at the hospital there.
Oh yeah. Let's see. After my sophomore year, my second year, Jackson, the St. John's Hospital in Jackson, hired a medical student each year to come up in the summer. Of course, Jackson had 700 people in the winter, but 7,000 were there every night during the summer.
Yeah.
There and in Yellowstone Park.
Right.
So it was the major route for people coming and going to Yellowstone, and so they hired a medical student to help at the hospital, and then they just turned that emergency room over to me. I would see the patients and call the doctor, and he'd say, "Can you sew that up?" And I'd say, "Yes." He'd say, "You go ahead and take care of it," and he just turned it over to me. Occasionally there'd be something serious enough he'd come over, but it had to be pretty bad for him to leave his office, because otherwise he just told me to take care of it.
Wow.
So it was a great experience.
Oh, it's a great way to learn. Yeah.
Were you married at that time?
Yes. Yeah. Let's see. We were married and we had Darren. We took Darren up with us.
And I imagine you being you, that you were pretty happy that you got to go work up in Jackson Hole.
Oh, I'll say. Yeah. Yeah, that was a great experience. And of course, we were just outside Yellowstone Park, had Thursday off, and so every Thursday we'd go in either along the upper Snake River or into Yellowstone Park and fish. My family took us to Yellowstone every summer. We'd get first crop hay done in June, and then we'd go up to Yellowstone for 5 days every summer. So we knew how to fish Yellowstone Park and catch fish. And so we'd go in and never got very good at catching them on the Snake River out of Jackson, but we could go into the park and catch a limit of fish every time.
Wow.
Would you go to Yellowstone Lake or would you go to the river? Or?
Yellowstone Lake, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And I just to remind you, me and Emily met up in Jackson Hole.
We love Jackson.
Oh.
We met up in the YSA branch up there.
Oh, yeah.
We were both working up there. So.
Yeah. Well, we had, my family had a favorite fishing hole on the north shore of Yellowstone Lake, just 5-10 miles west of Fishing Bridge. Mm-hmm. And so we'd go and stay in a rental cabin at Fishing Bridge, and then every day we'd go drive over to this secret fishing hole, which you couldn't see the lake from the highway there. We'd walk down about a quarter mile through the trees to get to the lake to fish, and so it was pretty much private fishing. And for those who did find it, it was before the days of the spinning reel. People fished with just this simple little wind-up reel, but if you were really good, you could throw it about 20 feet out in the lake. But my Uncle Jim Walton fished with a casting reel, which looked just like this little wind-up reel, but was a rather expensive piece of equipment that if you practice, you could cast 30 yards with. So I'd go down on that shore with all these guys fishing 20 feet from the shore, catching nothing, and I'd stand between them and cast 30 yards out and catch cutthroat trout every cast. It was a ball.
That's awesome. So how did you meet Grandma?
I was in medical school and dated a girl who was her roommate. So I went to pick up the roommate and met her there at their apartment. And a few weeks later, she was on the state Sunday school board. When I was in the bishopric of our student ward at the medical school. So a few years after I met her at her apartment, she came to our ward, our student ward, for a ward conference. And I saw her come in, so we were invited to the stake president's home that evening after sacrament meeting for just a social time. So I invited her to go with me. So that was our first date. We had it was the next Friday night or Saturday. Took her bowling and she whipped me.
What year did you guys get married?
59.
59.
59 or 58. We came here in 60 and Darren was 1, so we must have married in 58. He was born in 59 and we came to Tremont in 60. I think that's what it was.
So you guys have been married 62 years about?
Now,
Yeah. Let's see.
oh, let's
Yeah.
see.
Oh, no, about 60 years.
Yeah, about 60
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Because it's 2019.
So maybe 61 years
Yeah.
or so. It's pretty good.
What do you feel like is one of your greatest accomplishments?
Well, our family, of course. 6 great children who all are still great children. And their 33 children are great-grandchildren. I think that's the great accomplishment.
It's a pretty great accomplishment.
My work, I had a general practice here in town for 15 years, and then had a chance to go out to Thaco as their medical director. So I went out there and practiced industrial medicine until I retired in the year 2000. And and that was a great experience too. And it was a nice change from general practice in town. I didn't have the night call and weekend call that I had in private practice. Go out there and work from 7:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon, and then I was done till the next morning.
Mm. What do you think? What do you think your biggest regret is?
My biggest what?
Regret.
My regrets. Ooh.
That's a big question.
I don't have any serious regrets. I can't think of anything that I'd go back and do differently. It's all worked out so well, and the kids have all turned out so well, and the grandkids have all turned out so well, and I just feel like I don't know how it could be any better.
So it's a pretty
really
good
good.
answer.
That's
the
awesome.
way to live life with no regrets.
What advice would you give to your family who will be listening to this?
Well, stay close to the church, live the gospel. That and your family is where real happiness is. So you live the principles of the gospel and honor your marriage and love your kids, and do that. Everything else seems to take care of itself.
Do you have anything else you want to ask? Do you have anything else you want to say, Grandpa? Or any other stories or anything?
Oh, I've my favorite hobby, of course, has been hunting. We've got the house pretty much filled up with trophies from those hunting experiences. So that's always been a high point in my life, is those hunting trips each fall. We've got trophies here and up in the loft and downstairs. Those rooms are all filled with trophies that are happy reminders of the great times I've had hunting. The aerobic cowboy. You really should try jogging. You need it to be fit. Because when you're on that horse or tractor, all you really do is sit. That's what folks keep saying as they jog our country lane. They smile right through the sweat and tears, like suffering was their aim. They run in place a pen as they give me free advice. Stop chopping wood and bucking bales and get some exercise. They said I'd have to hurt some if I expected any gain. Could I be wrong? I've spent my life avoiding sweat and pain. It don't seem to count as exercise if you're getting something done. And I think it counts against you if you're having any fun. But they sort of got me wondering what my cholesterol might be. So I decided to start out easy with some aerobics on TV. Get your pulse to 100 plus your age. That's one good way of telling. But my pulse hit 200, just sitting, watching Ellen, who led the aerobics on TV. So I tried some running on the road in my cowboy boots and shirt. It must have done me lots of good. At least it really hurt. I went up to the high school track and tried to run some laps. Wore the heels right off my boots, and my spurs kept catching in my shaps. They say jogging will add 10 years to your life, and I've decided that must be true, because along with feeling more tired, I feel about 10 years older too. It might be nice to live longer, as long as the living is fun, but who wants to live 10 years longer if you got to spend 12 on the run? The Reader's Digest is a lot of help. It's full of scientific stuff. I measured belly, hips, and chest to see if I was thin enough. They say a shape like an apple is less healthy than a pear, with your fat down low around your hips. To be built like a woman helps you live longer, and it helps how your Levi's fits. I measure 40, 40, 40, a mathematical ratio of 1. I'm not shaped like a pear or an apple. I'm built like a small oil drum. They said there was this special diet with food, fresh, cooked, or canned, and I could just eat all I want of anything that I can't stand. Well, I've heard about the dangers of eating sugar, fat, and meat. If you watch TV or know how to read, there ain't nothing that's still safe to eat, except for fruit and vegetables, and maybe oats and wheat. But all that grain and vegetation is what we feed our horses, cows, and sheep. And they say that oats are healthy and will help you to survive. But horses eat them all their lives, and they're dead at 25. All this stuff about exercise and diet conflicts with the rest and the food that I need. So I've developed this standard for living I call my ex-jogger's creed. Whether we're fit or we're fat doesn't change our ultimate fate. So why should I spend my time doing something I know that I hate? When time runs out and our presence on the other side is requested, the jogger dies fit. Me? I just sit. But at least I plan to die rested. Because jogging is boring and painful. And when I'm tired or depressed, for fixing fatigue, you're not in my league if you think exercise works better than rest. Oh, I know nutrition's important, so I stay on this seafood diet. And whenever I happen to seafood, you can bet I always try it. And when I eat big dinners, I always eat some celery and drink diet pop with my donuts to neutralize the calories. I always add a little Slim Fast when I mix up a caramel milkshake and pour lots of low-cal dressing on my salad and my steak. And I know we should be careful about how much fat we eat. So when I have deep-fried apple fritters, I always have whole wheat. And I still do a little jogging. There are some benefits there, of course. But now when I decide to go jogging, I always go on my horse. I yawn and I stretch aerobically. And I've retired to aerobic heaven, eating potato chips and Snickers bars while I watch Ellen jog on Channel 11.
do one more?
Here's a short one.
Those are great.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Have you heard the latest? Said Brother Nielsen to his friend. They were there to see the bishop to sign a recommend. Now these two would never gossip, and they knew it would offend, because they knew it wasn't gossip if you only told your friends. It's Brother Larson, he explained. And I'm afraid to tell you that I understand he's backslid and become a Democrat. I just do not believe it, said Brother Olson. It really can't be so. Why, I saw him in the temple just a week ago. You can't be a Democrat. He was in the temple. That went over Dallin's head. Dr. Bob looked troubled. The diagnosis here is sad. I'm afraid your case is terminal. The prognosis really bad. Oh no, exclaimed Lavoyd. His voice was strained and frantic. How long have I got? He asked, feeling rising panic. 10, began the doctor. 10 what? He interrupted with a sob. 10 years, 10 months, 10 days, 9, 8, 7, 6, continued Dr. Bob.
Oh my goodness! 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Hey, you can keep on going. We're loving this.
That exercise one is like
Wow,
so
gold.
perfect.
Like,
it's
to go
long and
online.
perfect.
Something.
Yeah, people would love that.
Yeah.
Like if people get it posted.
You're a rancher, huh?
Or Facebook.
He asked. I answered, yep. What do you call your ranch? He said. The Lazy K, Rockin' J, Flying Double B, Bar D, Rafter P, Quarter Circle C. For a ranch to have a space like that, to have a name like that, he said, it must be quite a spread. You say you're raising purebred Angus. You got how many head? We got a lot of grass and water. You'd think the calves would thrive, but by the time we get them branded, there's not many that survive.
Why?
So, on a ranch,
The brand is the Lazy K, Rockin' J, Flying Double B, Bar B, Rafter P, Quarter Circle C.
So like bar 10 ranch.
So by the time they
so when they
brand
brand
it,
them, it kills the cows.
oh my gosh, that's awful. That's awful.
Norbert often called on Clara. Called on her for supper, the neighbors said. And he was really pretty backward and not the sharpest tool in the shed. And Clara, she wasn't much for looks. She was thin and she was tall. And if it wasn't for her Adam's apple, she'd have had no shape at all. But she could cook and she could sew, and she had a heart of gold. But after 20 years of suppers, it began to get a little old. One evening after supper, Norbert worked on his dessert as they sat on her back porch while Clara sewed a button on his shirt. She said, "You've been sitting here for 20 years. We should get married and leave our single status." "I guess you're right," Norbert replied. "But who would ever have us?"
Never have us.
Well, this is the first one I ever wrote, I guess. I'll read it and then we'll be done. Cowboy goes to college. This cowboy got a letter from his This cowboy got a letter from his girlfriend back in town. Said she was going away to college, going to earn a cap and gown. They ain't heard from her most every week, at least for a month or two. Then there was a long dry spell and he wondered what to do. Then shortly after Christmas, he heard from her again. Said she felt she had to write to him to tell him she'd been pinned. Then weeks went by without a word. Concern began to hatch. Why should she quit writing just because she lost a wrestling match? He thought it funny anyway she'd take a wrestling class. She'd always been so feminine, such a dainty lass. Then he got this bright idea, inspired by love, no doubt. he'd take a college course himself. At the same time, check her out. Have I done this for you tonight?
What was that?
I haven't done this for you tonight.
No.
No.
At the same time, check her out. It sort of seemed a good idea that he'd go back to school. With a little education, he'd be nobody's fool. He could be a high-tech rancher if he only had the knowledge. And the way to modern ranching was to go away to college. They said he'd have to register, which he was proud to do. He had a papered quarter horse. Now he'd be papered too. So he handed in his pedigree to the college on the hill. Said his lineage was uncertain, but his folks was married still. Send a transcript of your credits was the next thing that they asked. But he didn't need no credit. He always paid in cash. They asked about a scholarship. He said thank you in a note. He planned to pay. He planned to take his pickup. Didn't think he'd need a boat. They mailed him a catalog and a thick class schedule too. He studied them for hours and hours to see what he should do. He had to search to find a class that seemed to fit his goal. Then he found a class called fencing and decided to enroll. And then there was this other class might help him in the fall. And so he signed the dotted line for University Corral. Now he'd built lots of fences and corrals he'd worked on too. But what the heck, he might as well get an up-to-date review of the latest information on his favorite vocation. So with brave anticipation, he went to get an education. So the cowboy left for college. In his pickup truck he went. Figured since they had a campus there, there'd be room to pitch a tent. But they put him in a building that they called a dormitory, with a bunch of guys of every size and every category. He saw this row of houses with a brand on every door. But they was all strange letters that he'd never seen before. No Lazy K, no Rockin' J, no Quarter Circle C. Said he, I've never seen them brands. They all look Greek to me. Then he signed up for this fencing class. He said he'd need a foil. So he brought a roll of Reynolds wrap and his fencing tool, all oiled. Them fencers were queer lookers. Their pants all seemed too tight. Instead of building fences, they all brought swords to fight. The class called University Corral still offered upward movement for a ranch house. Excuse me. For a ranch hand from the mountains set on vocational improvement. So to the Fine Arts building, all his building tools he brings, to a classroom full of college kids who just stand around and sing. He sat through his first lecture, but before the hour was spent, he knew without a question what the letters BS meant. All of them professors had degrees behind their name, and he very soon concluded MS meant more of the same. Before his first day ended, it was plain for him to see that piled up higher and deeper was what was meant by PhD.
Higher and deeper.
At last, his first day ended. He was really feeling blue. He felt like he'd been stomped on, needed something fun to do. His roommates learned he had played some poker. Asked him to teach them too. He figured now he knew enough to teach a thing or two. So they started playing poker. He was still feeling sore. But as the game progressed, he reckoned he could even up the score. When the sun came up next morning, he had taught him how to play, and all his roommates were flat busted and started griping in dismay. You said you'd teach us poker, all the rules, and how to play. You didn't say before the game how much we'd have to pay. Oh, now, just a minute, said the cowboy from the sticks. It wasn't like a swindler tried to scam a bunch of hicks. You college boys, you must have known before your shirts you lost. Every education that you get is darn sure going to cost.
Wow, those are great.
That's awesome.
About how many poems have you written?
I quit counting at 200.